This is CBC Vancouver News.
Winter is coming. Weather warnings blanket most of BC with snow in the forecast.
So I think shade provides that, where I'm able to be around South Asians, but also be able to be queer and be happy about that.
Loud and proud, how an open mic night is creating safe spaces for the queer community in Surrey. Plus,
thank you, all you. Thank you so much.
A boy reunited with his wheels as a community in Burnaby steps up for the family of Ukrainian refugees. Good evening, I'm Lien Yeung. Thanks for joining us. Much of the province sits under weather warnings tonight as forecasts call for blustery or snowy conditions from Metro Vancouver to Fort Nelson. Environment Canada is warning of strong winds up to 80 kilometers per hour in Greater Victoria and Metro Vancouver, leading to possible power outages. Winter storm warnings are in effect for much of the southern interior. Heavy blowing snow is forecast along high elevation sections of highways throughout southern BC, with up to 25 centimeters expected. On the south coast, snow is in the forecast starting Monday. Crews are out this weekend doing snow and ice control on the Portman and Alex Fraser bridges. Drivers should be prepared for lane closures. The City of Vancouver has cut ties with the Vancouver area network of drug users. It's ending a controversial cleaning contract with the nonprofit for the downtown east side. The 6-month contract, worth $50,000 a month, started in July after the city committed to stop so-called street sweeps of East Hastings. Groups like Vandu were asked to empower peer workers and Tent City residents to keep their surroundings clean. The city says Vandu has been given half the amount under the contract and the remainder will be prorated during the months-long transition. Researchers from Simon Fraser University are conducting an independent evaluation of the program due in 2023.
There's so much empowerment and education and growth that has been happening in the neighborhood. And even beyond that, things that they wouldn't deem as cleaning, but actually have made the neighborhood better.
The city has said that the organization did not focus on street cleaning, which is what it was looking for. Canada's immigration minister is about to receive an influx of Christmas cards from BC, all of them urging him not to deport a New Westminster family back to Mexico days before Christmas.
In my heart, I know that something, a miracle, a Christmas miracle is going to happen. I just want to say thank you.
Over 1,000 holiday cards piled up at an event at the St. James Anglican Church asking Minister Sean Fraser to approve the family's permanent residency application. Claudia Zamorano works full-time as a housekeeper in the COVID-19 ward at Royal Columbian Hospital. Her husband works as a carpenter. They arrived in Canada from Mexico in 2017. She claims to be the subject of death threats from organized crime, but the family does not have authorization to stay in Canada. Last week, the family's attorney submitted a deportation request to the Border Services Agency pending their permanent residency decision. The request was over 940 pages, but it was denied in less than 24 hours.
And to me, that shows a lack of attention to detail. I don't know how in 24 hours they went through those 940 pages and decided to deny that request. That's the low. So we're really dealing, it's a real roller coaster of emotion. And I think that is something that can't be forgotten. Even if this family is allowed to stay, the stress and the trauma of this experience will not go away.
Nearly 2 weeks ago, BC Health Minister Adrian Dix also called on Ottawa to suspend the deportation, saying the province must ensure the safety of the family who contributed so much to the safety of British Columbians during the pandemic. As the population grows south of the Fraser, a nonprofit is doing what it can to support the LGBTQ community there. Share Vancouver opened an open mic in Surrey tonight. As Janella Hamilton reports, the advocacy group hopes the monthly meetups will give the growing queer South Asian community a safe space.
This is the first time Nimrit has felt comfortable enough to perform drag dressed from head to toe in traditional women's attire.
We make our own family as, LGBTQI people. And making our own family is initially very difficult because we have to detach from our actual family. We have to trust.
This is Share Vancouver's first ever open mic night, an event featuring performances by drag queens, singers, and poets. A safe space for Surrey's queer community with the hopes of reducing feelings of alienation, isolation, and depression.
We hear stories every day about people who've struggled or, they really we've had people crying and, really low. My wife as well, before she came out, she had suicidal thoughts.
Viplav Bhaskar says as an immigrant from India, events like this allow him to embrace his heritage as a proud queer individual.
The hardest thing to navigate is the contestations of belonging and the idea of whether you feel welcomed in a space, whether you feel like you can be your authentic self. And it's very tough to navigate that, like I said, in South Asian cultures.
The founder of Share Vancouver remembers when he first came out to his family after years of hesitation.
There's a lot of issues that come up in the South Asian community if you have a gay child or a queer child. There's a lot of pressure on that child to live a traditional heteronormative life.
Sangha says almost 20 years later, his relationship with his dad is still strained.
Every child wants the love and affection and support of their parents.
And while Sangha's mom has always stood by his side, he says a lot of people in the queer community are living in constant fear of being disowned by their families, which is why he created an organization that provides that support for South Asians.
There's not a lot of safe spaces for queer people in Surrey and Delta and south of the Fraser River, and we're a growing city.
Starting in January, Share Vancouver will be hosting weekly peer support groups at Surrey City Centre Library, in addition to its monthly open mic nights. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Surrey.
And in Coquitlam, 75 new affordable rental homes were opened today.
Our government is proud to have contributed nearly $8 million in grants to build these homes, in addition to over $500,000 in annual operating funding to help support the folks who are living here. It's part of our efforts to make a difference for the people who need affordable homes, and it's part of our $7 billion plan over 10 years.
The 5-story building is in the Austin Heights neighborhood, and rent ranges between $375 to around $2,300 monthly, depending on household income and unit size. The United Church contributed money towards the land and building, along with the BC government. And 90 years ago, a famine caused by the Soviet regime left more than 3 million Ukrainians dead. Today, a commemoration service was held in Victoria to remember the lives lost.
This has been happening for centuries, actually, in Ukraine, and this horrific war that's going on has, obviously ties back to the Holodomor, where Ukraine was changed demographically speaking quite significantly in the 1930s.
Holodomor was a man-made famine in Ukraine between 1932 and 1933, and millions of people starved to death. While the Soviet government originally denied that it happened, many countries, including Canada, recognize it as an act of genocide, and it is marked on the 4th Saturday of November. Canada is set to unveil its long-awaited Indo-Pacific strategy tomorrow. Federal ministers will be gathering at the Port of Vancouver. BC business owners with Chinese ties are watching carefully after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's recent clash with China's president at the G20 summit. I spoke with some of them who say they are worried frozen diplomatic relations could put a chill on trade. When China's President Xi Jinping confronted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the G20 summit,
everything we discuss is then leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate.
Business owner Chris Pereira felt the tension all the way in Richmond.
Going to cause additional headaches and additional waves in the relationship, and including in the business world.
Pereira helps Canadian brands enter China and vice versa. Lately, he says interest in China is slowing. And even though Chinese companies are still clamoring for Canadian dollars, the reception here can be chilly.
For many companies that have nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with the Chinese government, just having the brand of China placed onto them can have an unfair effect on their operations.
For some BC companies, the politics haven't gotten in the way yet.
We're seeing about double-digit growth this year over last year for Canadian brands that we operate.
But everyone is watching. A recent report from the University of Alberta found a continued decline in Canadian exports to China, a 14% drop from last year over the same period. BC exports more to China than any other province, more than $717 million alone in September.
We cannot really walk away from China. So the government of Canada, despite all the short-term irritations and disagreements, must protect the long-term interests of Canada.
This BC entrepreneur and political watcher says we may not like China's human rights record, but turning away the economic powerhouse could threaten Canada's competitive edge.
We can chew gum and walk at the same time. We can express our difference with China without having to jeopardize our trade with China.
Canada is set to announce its Indo-Pacific strategy in the coming days. Experts say they already have a sense of where Canada places China in terms of priority based on past interactions. Businesses here are watching and hoping they won't be on the losing end of any deals. Lien Yeung, CBC News, Vancouver.
An unforgettable moment for some UVic students today. A satellite that they built finally lifted off for the International Space Station.
3, 2, 1.
And that is SpaceX blasting off with OrcaSat on board, taking off at 11:20 this morning from the Kennedy Space Center. The satellite will act as a light source in space to help astronomers calibrate telescopes, making it easier to measure distances to stars. Every member of the class contributed directly to the years-long project.
5 lab right now.
In UVic's Elliott building, a mini mission control has been created for the launch of OrcaSat.
It's been a lot of work to get to this point, and everybody is just so excited to see it finally launch.
The student-designed satellite has been in the works for the past 4 years.
OrcaSat will rendezvous with the International Space Station before being deployed to collect data for the next 18 months. A family of Ukrainian refugees in Burnaby are feeling relieved. They were forced to abandon their son's specialized medical gear while fleeing for safety. But thanks to some helping hands, they have been reunited with the equipment. Our Saurabh Sandhu has more on this Christmas wish come true.
As first Christmas in the last life, yeah? It's very nice.
In the gift-wrapped boxes is the special equipment for 8-year-old Mark Motorenko, who suffers from cerebral palsy. It helps Mark exercise and keep his body functioning. But when the Motorenko family fled Ukraine in July for refuge in Canada, they left in such haste they could not take the bulky equipment with them.
We try to deliver this here because it's very big, and all companies say, sorry, we can't make it. And only one company make it.
However, bringing the equipment over to Canada meant huge shipping costs, which the Motorenko family was not in a position to afford. And buying the equipment locally was also not an option.
So here is very costly, all this stuff, and don't have like this. We need only this because we know this stuff, we know how to use it.
That's when the family, along with their local hosts in New Westminster, reached out to MP Peter Julian. He connected them with Burnaby Firefighters Charitable Trust. With their help, the equipment was at last shipped from Ukraine.
They put in place the resources so that today we're able to give the specialized equipment, the tricycles, the walker, the stretching equipment that is so vital for Mark's health and well-being.
So we're just happy to get this equipment back in Mark's hands.
The firefighters are always there for the community or for anyone that needs help. And I think it's not just about, going out and saving lives and being part of that, which is ultimately very important. But I think equally important is being that part of the community.
To celebrate the occasion, little Mark also got to ride in the big red fire truck. As for the happy parents, they have a message for all those who helped their boy.
Thank you, all you. Thank you so much.
Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Burnaby.
A large protest against COVID lockdowns erupts in China. Videos show residents arguing with officials and breaking through barriers. More on that story next. Ukraine's president marked a bitter event in the country's history by accusing Russia of repeating history. Volodymyr Zelensky compared current strikes to the Soviet-era famine that left millions of Ukrainians dead in the early 1930s. His remarks came on Ukraine's annual Memorial Day for the tragedy. CBC's Jamie Strachan has the latest developments.
In towns and cities across Ukraine, an already shaken population sifts through the debris after the latest barrage of Russian missiles have left more horror. This local resident says she was in her house when the missiles hit, blasting out windows, leaving her in terror. It's not just places where people live that are being targeted. Russia is attacking key electricity infrastructure, leaving millions in the dark without heat and power as winter sets in. Vitaly Kim, governor of Mykolaiv in the southern part of Ukraine, urgently told people to ration water, conserve power, and plan for darkness. Relief workers on the ground say all of this is making already difficult work even harder.
Right now, we don't have electricity, and for this week, we have 2 days without any electricity, and the weather condition right now is low in the temperatures, and the most problems that we facing is the heating.
This latest Russian tactic has drawn condemnation from around the world.
What we see now is that President Putin is trying to weaponize winter. And by indiscriminate, deliberate attacks on cities, on civilian infrastructure, he tries to deprive the Ukrainians of gas, heating, water, and this just demonstrates once again the brutality of this war.
As Ukrainians continue to deal with the horrors of this war, they are also looking back today. Today is Holodomor, the 90th anniversary of the Russian-caused mass famine that left more than 3 million Ukrainians dead. The event is being commemorated around the world.
The gruesome tactics applied back then entailed isolation and the confiscation of grain and food supplies, the forced deportation of Ukrainians. Today we stand united in stating that hunger must never again be used as a weapon.
Events are also being held in cities across Canada. Support for a nation dealing with the pain of both the past and the present. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
News emerged from Western China today of a large protest against COVID lockdowns. It happened Friday night in the capital of Xinjiang province. From Beijing, Patrick Falk reports.
Well, these really were extraordinary videos coming out of Xinjiang province showing hundreds of people taking to the streets protesting against this zero COVID chaos. But it is also just the latest example of tempers boiling over as a result of COVID-19 containment measures. So the latest we're hearing is that authorities have now agreed to phase out restrictions in Xinjiang province, but at the same time they have denied that the implementation of COVID curbs is what resulted in the deaths of at least 10 people in a residential building following a blaze there earlier this week. But the situation is getting much more intense. The example in Xinjiang was extreme because the people there have been under a lockdown now for over 3 months. It's worth noting also that videos are surfacing increasingly in China of different protests and unrest in different parts of the country as the situation goes on. And that in itself is an indication that censors are having a hard time catching up and scrubbing this material from the internet before it becomes available for other people to see. And that is something that authorities will be concerned about also because of the possibility of it inspiring other people to go out and demonstrate against COVID curbs.
At least one person is dead and 10 others are missing after a landslide in southern Italy. It happened on the island of Ischia off the Naples coast, and it came amid torrential rain. There was heavy flooding, buildings were brought down, and cars were pushed into the sea. The island is densely populated, and a large number of structures were built illegally. And you're looking at a live shot outside our downtown Vancouver studios. You can see the camera shaking as the winds are picking up. We are expecting heavy winds overnight and snow as well in the forecast. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. CBC British Columbia's annual Food Bank Day returns on December 2nd. Join us for special broadcasts of your favorite CBC Radio 1 programs and fundraising for BC's food banks. And enjoy candlelit carols and joyous holiday favorites at Christmas with Corleone, December 16th to 19th. Celebrate the season and get your tickets at corleone.org.
To Vancouver Island, where the Gingerbread Showcase opened its candy-coated doors to the public.
This is our main fundraiser for Habitat Victoria, and the funds that come from people who donate to vote for their favorite creation go to our Build Fund to help local families get a hand up into affordable home ownership.
It's the 14th year for the event, which is a fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity Victoria. The theme this year is magical, and all of the creations have to be made with edible ingredients. Bakers have been encouraged to let their creativity flow, and they sure finished with some very sweet results. Let's take a look at that forecast now. Some precipitation on the way by the way of snow. There's the weather zone warnings, that big white patch looking at snowfall warnings. There's also wind warnings for the south coast, anywhere up to 80 kilometers per hour in terms of wind gusts. Temperature, though, wise across the south coast, still pretty mild, as you can see right now. A little cooler as you get out to Hope, looking at 5 degrees, but well above the freezing mark. But across the province tomorrow, temperatures are going to be cooling, and that's going to be the story for the rest of the week as well. And Dease Lake looking at a -2, Prince George -4, Prince Rupert, it will still be gorgeous. Crisp at 3 degrees and sunny. And looking at the interior, you can see that snowfall that is forecasted for tomorrow. 9 degrees still in Victoria, and in Metro Vancouver, similar conditions tomorrow. Looking at showers, 7 degrees will be our high. And then as Monday starts, that work week begins, we are going to be seeing snowfall for the rest of the week. So make sure you get those snow tires on, because at least a rain snow mix in through midweek. So I hope you stay warm and dry. That is your late news for this Saturday night. Thank you for watching. I will be back here tomorrow. Have a good night.